This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. A lot of times you'll hear people talk about the Browns need to build a winning culture. They need to have the right mindset, right? And if you've watched enough football or heard enough football talk, you can understand that shit starts to sound like buzzwords after a while, right? Everybody wants a winning culture. Everybody wants people to play the right way. Everybody wants, people to care about what team they're on. But what does that actually mean? What does a winning culture actually look like? How do you build a winning culture? How do you build a locker room that, once you get to playing important games, has what it takes to do what needs to be done and know what needs to be done to win it all. See, that might not seem important now because we're so far away from us thinking that the Browns have any kind of championship ambitions. But if I've learned anything from watching sports my entire life and recently watching the Cavaliers, this stuff starts when nobody's paying attention. See, the issues that the Cavs have today and why they can't get past where they want to get past, those issues were there in 2021, in 2022. They were there early on with the team. It's just they got better and better, so people ignored it for a little while. But eventually, the chicken's going to come home to roost, right? So I think when it comes to building a culture, when it comes to hoping that this team can get to the ceiling of a championship contender and winning a championship, and if you want this team to build the kind of culture that's necessary to win a championship, well, that work, the most important parts of it, that starts today. So what is the most important part of building a championship team? I'm going to give you my opinion on what that takes in just a second, but first I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a fun way to earn cash while you watch your favorite teams. No complex betting rules, just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. Here are my picks for this upcoming season, AFC North edition. Jimmy Bernard, I have less than 475. This has to do with volume available in Pittsburgh's offense. Quincy Judkins, I have over 975. Browns improved line. I think the run game's going to be better with it. Chase Brown, under 900 yards. Joe Burrow equals less rushing yards usually for the Bengals offense. Mark Andrews, more than 475 yards. Lamar's going to need a safety blanket. Check to see if PrizePicks is available in your state. You could follow me on the app at Quinn_C to see all my lineups. Download the PrizePicks app today. Play $5 and get $50 in lineup to download the app using the link in the description. So when we talk about a championship culture, a championship team, right? We know the cliches. You want people who sacrifice and all of that. You want people who are going to be team first. And those things do matter to a point, right? I think the most important thing, you got to make sure you got the talent to even have them kind of expectations. But one of that thing matters to a point, though, right? Having the right kind of people in the building, people who be willing to sacrifice and all that. But that can't be all of it. People complain about the Cavs' culture as why they can't win. And the Cavs aren't some unruly team that doesn't listen, that hates, taking direction, and they're selfish. They're quite the opposite. The Cavs are a very selfless team. The Cavs are a very well-behaved team. Some would argue they could use a little bit more of an edge, certainly. But that's not been the problem with the Cavaliers. The problem with the Cavaliers is they're not a very opportunistic basketball team, right? I think when you look at the Cavs' issues, you look at all the things the Cavs have not achieved that you wish they could have achieved over the last couple of years. There have been opportunities in games to get way closer to those goals than they end up realizing. But they just don't capitalize on those opportunities. They're not good at identifying those opportunities, and they're not good at closing in on those opportunities. So if we're going to flip this back to football, if you're asking me what I think is important that the Browns develop in this culture is that this is a opportunistic football team. Say what you want about the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Organizationally, you don't want to be in the spot the Pittsburgh's in because they're just good enough to make the playoffs, but not good enough to be a threat and not good enough to get a quarterback, et cetera, right? We all see the argument for it. But if Pittsburgh does luck into getting a quarterback, it's not going to be long until they're a legitimate contender again, right? The only thing holding back Pittsburgh is the fact that they don't have a quarterback. If they had a franchise quarterback, they would be one of the best teams in the NFL. And the reason is, under the Tomlin era, they were one of the most opportunistic teams in the NFL, right? Whenever you see people talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers devil magic, right? That's just them being opportunistic. They might make mistakes early in games, but if you leave the door open, they're going to walk through it. Look at the New York Knicks. They just won the NBA Finals this year. We've seen the New York Knicks evolve since 2023. They've been one of the Cavs' biggest rivals in this era of basketball. And what really separates the New York Knicks from the Cleveland Cavaliers, I'll tell you this, is not talent. The Cavs are very talented. They got a ton of talent on that team, right? You can argue that they have more talent than the Knicks. But that's not what the Cavs have been in the deficit of. Whenever the Cavs play the Knicks, it's obvious that the Knicks are just a more opportunistic basketball team than the Cleveland Cavaliers. A big rebound goes up for grabs. Who gets it? Josh Hart. A big three needs to be made. It's an open three. Who makes it? Landry Shamet, right? Who's not making it? Sam Merrill. They are the more opportunistic basketball team. They're not perfect. They're not the most talented team you've ever seen. If we compare that roster to other rosters I've seen in my life win a championship, it's not going to be on the higher end, right? This isn't the KD Warriors they got going on there, or the Miami Heat Bron teams, or even the Cavs Bron teams. Like, this ain't a super team that they got going there, but it's a veteran team that understands when an opportunity is available and when to walk through the door. That's why it always feels like devil magic. That's why it always feels like they could go on a run whenever. Because if you leave the door open just a little bit, they know how to walk through it. And they develop that culture over years of just being an opportunistic basketball team, of learning how to identify those moments in games and seizing those moments in games. If I am Todd Monken, if I'm Andrew Berry, and I'm trying to build a team that's going to be a championship contender, I don't know what I'm going to be able to get at quarterback. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to replace the raw star power defensively that Myles Garrett brought on an individual level to this team. Right? Both of those things are really hard things to do, especially when you don't think that you're going to be bad enough to get a top pick. But what you can instill is a mentality of opportunity. This quarterback competition is another example of an opportunity to build a more opportunistic culture, right? I want whoever wins this quarterback job to seize moments, to seize opportunities, right? I don't want to be sitting here talking about, well, nobody really took it, but we got to pick a starter. That's not an opportunistic culture there, right? I want to see somebody go out there and take the job. I think that's what Todd Monken wants to see. I think he wants somebody to go up there and grab it, right? If you used to watch WWE back in the day, Vince McMahon used to talk about somebody's got to go up there and grab the brass ring, right? You know, that's about seizing the opportunity, having the audacity to think that you can walk through the door if the door is left open, right? The problem with the Cavs, they don't have that natural confidence, that natural audacity to believe that if the door cracks open, that they can walk through it. They're worried about everything else that could happen if the door closes. It's a scared culture. And unfortunately, it's not been good enough for them to get to where they want to get to. You flip this to trying to build a culture at the beginning. We're at the genesis of what the Cleveland Browns are trying to do. And that's what I want to see. I want to see guys go out there and get the most out of the opportunities that they're getting. I don't know how often this team will be able to score touchdowns, but I want them to have a high success rate. You know, I want them to have a high expected points number, because they might not be able to get the raw amount of opportunities to be one of the top scoring offenses, but I want them to be one of the most opportunistic offenses in the NFL. Look, we are all aware of the uphill battle it's going to be for them to replace the impact of Myles Garrett this year, but that's something for me to worry about. I don't want the guys in that locker room worrying about that. I want them to have the audacity, the irrational confidence to think that they actually can make up for that. Like if they come out here and give me quotes like, oh yeah, it's not going to be no thing replacing Myles. Like obviously I don't agree with that, but I actually like the mindset. I like the energy. I like that that's what the culture of the team is putting out. Jared Verse saying that, you know, he wears bigger shoes than Myles Garrett, so he got big shoes to fill, but my feet are bigger. Like, okay, cool. Like, you know, do I think that Jared Verse is realistically going to fill the void of no. But I like that he has the audacity to think that he could do that. Because sometimes you just need the audacity. Sometimes you just need the belief that you can. And look, you might not be able to reach 100% of what your goal is, but you'll be able to reach 75, 80% of it. And that's better than nothing, which is what happens when you don't have the audacity to think that you're capable of doing such a thing. So I like that I'm seeing that out the Browns defense. And look, it's going to be more than just Jared Verse. It's going to have to be more than some of the young defenders on this team. You know, certain guys are going to have to step up and they have opportunities to do so. McGuire, if you're Alex Wright, if you're Mason Graham, Myles Garrett not being here is an opportunity for you. And that's how they should view this, right? The Browns have to build their culture off of being opportunistic, because if they don't have that in them and all they have is talent and well-behaved people, which again, having well-behaved people in your organization is not a bad thing. It's an integral part to building your culture, but you also need those people to be opportunistic, to have the internal confidence, the internal belief that if a door is open, they should walk through it. I hate when people imply that the only way that you can have a tough physical football team is if you have criminals playing all up and down your team. Sure, you like people who don't mind to fight. Sure, you want people out there who love to be physical, but that doesn't mean that they don't know where the line is between physical and criminal. You know what I mean? Like, there's a way to be smart and be physical. I resent the idea that you can't like physicality, but also not be a terrible person. Like, that's not hand in hand. A lot of people who aren't assholes like boxing or box themselves. The same thing goes with confidence, right? Like a lot of times when I say, hey, this team needs more confidence or they need to be more sure of themselves, people think that I'm talking about somebody who thinks that they're a superstar, has an overinflated ego, but that's not the same thing as confidence. And oftentimes somebody who has an ego, has a need to try to make you feel like they're the greatest thing on earth, that person's usually not as confident as they appear, right? Confidence is not really spoken. It's understood. It's felt, right? You could feel a team that's confident versus a team that makes you want to think they confident, right? You could tell an act versus the real deal. Like Nick Chubb didn't say a word, but Nick Chubb didn't lack for confidence. You feel me? Like that's what confidence can look like. It could take form in different ways. It could be more of the Jarvis Landry style where Jarvis is more of a shit talker and that's how he establishes his confidence. It could be more in the nonchalant way that like somebody like Odell Beckham, when he was on the Giants especially, had that level of confidence, which was unreal. And part of the reason he was able to make such an impact on the game, despite not having that long of a peak, is because he had the audacity to try things that no other player would try because he was that confident in himself, right? The one-handed catch doesn't become a thing if Odell Beckham doesn't have the audacity to think that that's some shit that he could do in the game. And then now that he has the audacity, it gives other people the confidence to think that they can do it. Like, real confidence is inspiring. It gives you energy. It's why it is that when teams have that person or those kind of players on the team that have that level of confidence in themselves, that level of confidence in their teammates, why it just rises guys to that level. Again, think about the Knicks as the example. Like, that's not the greatest roster I've ever seen built, but boy, do they put it together when they need it. And they just have that level of confidence in each other. And you could just see how that fuels each and every single one of them versus like when you watch, and again, I hate to dog on them because I love the Cavs, but when you watch the Cavs, sometimes it's like, oh, they don't have confidence that they could pull through here, and it's actually draining each other. They're actually playing worse now. We saw this with the Spurs as well in the playoffs, right? Like, that's what this team needs. And how do you build confidence? You build confidence by actually winning games. And this is why I think winning games is, super important for this team going forward. So we don't need 11 Perion Winfreys out there, right? And that's what I've learned from the Perion situation is that sometimes you can go a little bit too far in the cuckoo end. But what you do need are people that can be on this team, veterans who can identify those kind of moments, right? One of my biggest issues with team building and how teams do it in the modern day is they built these young ass teams and they don't have any veterans. I know I'm talking a lot of basketball here, but maybe it's because the finals are on my brain. But like, think about the Spurs. Like, I watch the Spurs and I'm like, oh, they don't even know what an opportunity looks like. They don't know what it looks like to leave the door open for a team. So they can't even identify that they're leaving the door open right now. And the Knicks are just walking right through it, right? They're too young and they don't have anybody there who can identify it because their veteran player is De'Aaron Fox. And De'Aaron Fox don't know what he's talking about when it comes to that, right? Like, he demonstrated that during that series. And I know they got like other vets, Harrison Barnes, Bismack Biyombo, but those guys don't play, right? And I think it's important to retain guys like Denzel Ward, retain guys like Grant Delpit, because you need guys who are veterans who play to be able to inform these young players, hey, this drive right here, it's very important. The game can change right here. We need this one. And they'll listen to the guys on the field, right? Guys who say shit on the sideline, they're not going to listen to them because they ain't there at the end of the day. So you need the guys on the field to be able to identify that. It's going to be something to look for with this offense. Like, who's going to be able to be that guy for them because this offense is so young? Maybe it's somebody on the offensive line. They do have a couple of veterans there, but wide receiver-wise, it's just young players. And maybe one of these young players has an older soul and they're able to kind of just recognize these things instinctually. Maybe there's that there. But somebody needs to identify for the offensive, like, hey, if we don't score here, that's going to swing the game. This is the stuff that it might not feel like it matters right now. You'll hear people talk like, oh, I actually want the Browns to stink because we want draft position. But this is why I say winning is important, right? This is why I'll make the argument against tanking that if you have opportunities to win games, especially early in the season to play meaningful football down the stretch, you should take those opportunities. For a developing team like the Cleveland Browns, it might feel like getting the number 1 overall pick might be the most valuable thing for you. But who knows? In the way that development works, it might end up being that winning 8 or 9 games is more crucial to that overall team's development than getting the 1 draft pick that you really covet, because winning cements culture. Winning cements lessons, right? When you learn how to be opportunistic, it's because you took advantage of a moment and you won. And you remember that for the next time you're in a tough situation. Somehow in the modern day and age, we have gotten to a place where winning is actually underrated again. I don't know how we keep getting here, but we keep getting to this place. But winning is kind of underrated. People don't value it as much as they should. Not just from the entertainment aspect of it, which I think is reasonable for fans to feel like, hey, if my team's going to go out there, I want them to win no matter what the record looks like. But also from the standpoint of like, hey, what are you actually trying to build here? Are you actually trying to get guys to buy in? And what lessons are you trying to have these guys learn. You need them to win games to learn those lessons. You're not going to take a team that ain't done nothing, ain't won nothing, ain't played in nothing meaningful, add the right player and turn them into a Super Bowl champion overnight, because they still don't know how to win. They still don't know how to be opportunistic. They still don't know what they could do in situations where, you know, shit's not going their way. They're not going to be able to be that kind of team, and you're going to run up against those kind of problems when it's time for them to be that. You got to teach these lessons now, and I think that's one of the things that slides under the radar with the Browns that not a lot of people talk about. But that's just my 2 cents. Let me know your 2 cents in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.